Good morning, Earthlings. Yes. Too many mornings of boring entrances. Hmm. Sound okay? Good. So, it is what is it? What's the day? Somehow it seems important. The 25th of October. I've heard hints that there might be an election coming up. If you have not yet voted, dear friends, I encourage you to do so. Even if you're a die-hard Bernie fan like I am, it's time to vote. So I am Robert Beatty. I'm coming to you from Portland, Oregon, actually just a little west of Portland in Beaverton. This is a Sunday morning broadcast of the Portland Insight Meditation Community, which has been happening for probably, 8 or 9 years, regularly on Sundays, before the time of COVID. And if you're new to this broadcast, please write down portlandinsight.org and take a look at our website. It's kind of a mess, actually, at this point. We're working on a new one, but all the information's there. It's just a little old format. And my website, robertbeatty.com, has a ton more. So, I like to begin with a poem. A poem about mindfulness and intimacy, in a way. A poem about the present moment being of utter importance. It's by Ellen Bass, and it's called Gate 22, and it's Gate C22 in the Portland airport. So this happened here. We're there, I guess. Let us listen with our whole body. Make contact with the chair, whatever you're sitting in, and let these words nourish. At gate C22 in the Portland airport, a man in a broadband leather hat kissed a woman arriving from Orange County. They kissed and kissed and kissed. Long after the other passengers clicked the handles of their carry-ons and wheeled briskly toward short-term parking. The couple stood there, arms wrapped around each other, like he'd just staggered off the boat at Ellis Island, like she'd been released at last from ICU, snapped out of a coma, survived bone cancer, made it down from Annapurna in only the clothes she was wearing. My mind just went to survived the fires, survived the smoke, survived coronavirus. Neither of them was young. His beard was gray. She carried a few extra pounds you could imagine her saying she had to lose. But they kissed lavish kisses, like the ocean in the early morning, the way it gathers and swells, sucking each rock under, swallowing it again and again. We were all watching. Passengers waiting for the delayed flight to San Jose. the stewardesses, the pilots, the aproned woman icing Cinnabons, the man selling sunglasses. We couldn't look away. We could taste those kisses crushed in our mouths. But the best part was his face. When he drew back and looked at her, his smile soft with wonder, almost as though he were a mother still open from giving birth. As your mother must have looked at you, no matter what happened after. If she beat you or left you or you're lonely now, you once lay there. The vernix not yet wiped off. And someone gazed at you as if you were the first sunrise seen from the earth. The whole wing of the airport hushed, all of us, trying to slip into that woman's middle-aged body. Her plaid Bermuda shorts, sleeveless blouse, glasses, little gold hoop earrings, tilting our heads up. The best part was his face. When he drew back and looked at her, his smile soft with wonder, almost as though he were a mother still open from giving birth, as your mother must have looked at you, no matter what happened after. If she beat you or left you or you're lonely now, you once lay there, the vernix not yet wiped off, and someone gazed at you as if you were the first sunrise seen from the earth. The whole wing of the airport hushed, all of us trying to slip into that woman's middle-aged body. Her plaid Bermuda shorts, sleeveless blouse, glasses, little gold hoop earrings, tilting our heads up. I just had a thought. See if I can do this. I've learned a new trick or two on the broadcast. So let us take that image into our practice. Let us greet our every experience with that level of willingness to meet, of open-heartedness, of recognizing the complete, utter improbability of being here at all, let alone being here and mindful of ourselves. Mindful of everything that occurs. And let's remind ourselves of the precepts, or the refuge rather, not the precepts. The refuges are not a religious practice. In fact, to the best of my ability, everything that I do, and I think true for all the other teachers, isn't a religious practice. In fact, I was filling out a form for Microsoft's grant, when Microsoft employees give to a nonprofit, Microsoft will double it. And there's a question in there, will any of this money be spent for religious purposes? And I paused. Actually, I wanted to talk with Laura Dow, one of our board members who's very, very involved in fundraising professionally. And I can say in all truthfulness, not a penny will go to religion. What we support is waking up to the Buddha, waking up to the Christ, waking up whatever name you stick on it. Waking up to that awareness which is behind everything. And waking up to what we discover about impermanence, dukkha, non-self, and realizing that we do this practice in the company of all life. The great whales, the trees outside, the people we think of as our enemies. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. All right. So there we are, waiting at the airport. And he, she, they appear. Precious, one of a kind. We thought we might never meet them again. And then they're right here. So let us approach this body with the same fervor, the same willingness to be present. And just as that embracing the relationship with another person, if we've done it a few times, we know it's not going to be all sweetness and light. It's going to get damn difficult. And the same is true with the body. It's capable of such ecstatic, amazing pleasure. Dark chocolate. It's also capable of sickness and great pain. Dare we embrace it? Are we willing to take the, as Stephen Levine put it so beautifully, are we willing to embrace the healing we took birth for? And so we notice the contact of the body with the chair. Notice the sense of contact of the clothing with the body. Seems like a lifetime ago in a previous relationship, one of my stepkids couldn't stand the sense of contact of clothing with the body. Terrible struggle for her. Hypersensitive. Mostly we don't notice it. It's kind of a neutral experience. But it's there. Notice the life in the face. And notice that the body breathes. Embrace the breathing. Each breath arrives out of nowhere. Each breath rises to fullness. And then it declines and then disappears. And in the ecosystem that we call the human experience, there are some wild creatures, thoughts, emotions, memories, plans, grasping desire, disliking, resisting, There's restlessness, and sloth and torpor, dullness. There can be doubt. We are scientists, naturalists, using the tools of mindfulness and concentration, curiosity, tranquility, to meet these experiences as fully as we possibly can. Some are pleasant, some are unpleasant, many are sort of neutral. We meet them as they are. Time and again, and again and again. Mindfulness will awaken in the midst of a wandering mind. Noticing the wonder of that. How does that happen? And then on the basis of our intention to practice mindfulness of in-breathing and out-breathing, we then take the breath, wherever it is, the beginning, middle, or end, drop awareness into there. establishing bare attention, uninterpreted awareness, contact with the sensations of breathing. And then the same thing evolves with thoughts. Thoughts are experienced as thoughts, and their content is not so important anymore. Same with mood. There's a lot of freedom in experiencing mood directly without identification. Being attentive to any small itches, any impulses to move, and therefore to any pain. And there's always discomfort in the human body. It starts with the first breath, maybe before. And generally we move to escape, to scratch the itch or adjust the back. And of course, never do anything that would hurt you, injure you. But there does come a moment when it really makes sense to just bear with the discomfort if we can. To stretch the edge of the envelope of what we can bear. We practice with small discomforts. We grow in strength. In a way, we prepare for the onslaught of the great discomforts. The little itches and aches and pains felt deeply, felt with bare attention, prepare us for the broken heart, for the difficult diagnosis. And so we invest in each breath with bare attention. From time to time, let us open the field of knowing, of awareness, to the entire body. Start at the feet and know they are alive. Feel them. Bear attention to the legs, the knees, the thighs. Attention to the torso, expanding and contracting with the breath. Attending to the life in the hands, the fingers, the forearms and upper arms. The shoulders and the neck and the face, the jaw, the cheeks, the lips. The ears, the eyes, forehead, scalp. And within this full human experience, there's the breathing happening. Are the sensations of breathing pleasant, unpleasant, or indeterminate, neither pleasant nor unpleasant? Are there sensations in the body that are unpleasant? Are there sensations in the body that are pleasant? Notice that we tend to move toward the pleasant or abide still in the pleasant and move away from the unpleasant. This is, of course, normal for a living creature. Resting in the breath. Awakening in the midst of the wandering minds. Simply coming back. Coming here now to this aliveness. Whenever the option arises, become more intimate with your life. It is a one-of-a-kind ever. That says a lot. Billions of years, and there's only ever been this you. We take the time and practice to reveal this uniqueness. And it is through this embracing with greater and greater attention, bare attention, that we reveal the truth of what this being is, what it's truly part of, a manifestation of. And now, please bring awareness to the eyes, think a loving, kind, grateful thought for eyes, for your eyes, for them still to be working is such a miracle. And I'm going to finish with a gong today. I brought my beautiful gong home from the center. Please let it ring through you, ring into you, hear it. And then as it slowly fades away, form the intention to open the eyes. And then really be present with the mystery of seeing. And then with seeing, we have the option to perceive. And then we may perceive familiar faces, friends, Dharma explorers of the highest commitment. In what I think of as real life, I'm very prone to hugging. And as I look among your pictures, I have impulses to just reach out and hug you. I would ask permission, of course. I've learned about that. Incidentally, on that topic, if you've not seen the great video, it's British, it's on YouTube. I think if you just looked for consent, no, a cup of tea, consent, a cup of tea, and it's hilarious and it's so informative. If your friend invited you over for a cup of tea, and when you get there, they're unconscious, don't force them to drink a cup of tea. It's some very straightforward, helpful advice. Oh, Kat just posted the link. Yay, Kat. So, I am unaware of announcements. Jim, do you have announcement ideas? Sorry to put you on the spot.
There's, I don't think there's anything from now till the end of, but the beginning of November, there's going to be a Saturday retreat with Gary and Candle.
Right. And when is Candle Sunday night? Is that this Sunday?
I think she's finished for the month.
Oh.
Because there's 5 Sundays, and she does the first and the third.
Got it.
It's complicated.
Yeah. Calendars.
Hey, it's Candle.
Oh, there's Candle. Yay.
Not tonight.
Where are you? Oh, there you are.
It's not tonight. It's next week.
Oh,
On
good.
the 1st.
Oh, so it'll be the first, yeah.
Yeah.
Candle, I see you in your royal ease form.
That's right. My royal ease. Listening in a relaxed nature. Thank you for a lovely guiding this morning on opening the awareness. That's very nice.
Thank you, my dear. Stay tuned for Vedana.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I had another idea. I'll talk to you about it later.
Oh, give it to me now. I'll give you a different talk.
I was thinking about the 3 Papanchas. That's a different talk.
Uh-huh.
Let's stick with Vedana.
Let's talk.
Big hugs.
So I guess I should fulfill my community leader role of reminding for the opportunity of practicing generosity. Generosity is foundational in our practice. And hey, I have an idea. Hey, Candle. You still there? Oh.
Yes, I'm here. I had to come back to turn the mic on.
Would you like to say a little something about Donna and supporting the center? You're so eloquent.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very kind. Wow, this is a long subject, but I'll try to keep it short. It is a rare opportunity that we are born in this lifetime to be able to hear the Buddhist teachings. And because the teachings have been passed down for so long, from generation to generation, we still have the opportunity to continue them from generations on. And that rare opportunity affords us the ability to give our appreciation, both in practice to ourselves, giving us this opportunity to practice, and in the joy that is produced from giving to the teachers and the centers and those who can continue with the Dharma teachings, which they do so selflessly. And my favorite quote is that there was a woman at the time of the Buddha by the name of Visakha, who the Buddha identified as his chief patroness. And she said of her acts of generosity, "When I remember my acts of generosity, I shall be glad. When I am glad, I shall be happy. When my mind is happy, my body will be tranquil. When my body is tranquil, I shall feel pleasure. When I feel pleasure, my mind will become concentrated. That will bring about the development of the spiritual faculties, the spiritual powers, and the factors of enlightenment. So our generosity is the foundation of our own realization of the Buddhist teachings of peace. So give as much as you can and a little more for the joy of it. How's that?
Wow, that was pretty darn fine. Just like that. See, I knew I should call on you. Thanks, Candle.
Thank you. It's an honor, a true honor to be able to be a part of whatever way we spread the Dharma in our lives. And that has to happen monetarily.
Well, Jim, are you still capable of standing and moving?
Yes.
Yay, may I delegate to you? You've got full powers.
All right. Relative to Zoom. Things not so much. Okay. So, I think
Friends on
Your
FaceTime
vision of the
and YouTube,
space that I'm standing.
if
My
you
feet
would
are on
like
the floor.
to
I look to my right
participate
towards a wall.
more,
Look toward my left towards a wall.
I encourage you
Spirit
to
center,
go
noticing
to
the heaviness, the
my
earthiness of
website,
this body sinking into the
robertbeatty.com,
soles of the
and
feet.
find the link that will take you to the Zoom gathering.
And then we'll
Jim is now going to lead in mindful movement,
notice
and
all the
I,
movement in the body.
at least this far, have not figured out how to
Simple intention
transfer the
to breathe
video to YouTube and Facebook.
and be with
So,
the rhythm of the breath, watching the beginning and then the fading away, and then a little gap before we begin again.
I'll be back in about
There's
15
a subtle
minutes
movement throughout the whole body,
to give a talk
embracing
on Vedana, on
energy,
feeling.
each breath
Heather, I just saw a crutch.
Why, yes. I fractured my tibial plateau on August 3rd and have been in various stages of inactivity. But now
Yikes.
I'm down to one crutch and a leg brace, and today I get to experiment with driving. But I had a full 9 weeks of not being able to put any weight on it at all.
Oh dear. I see. What's,
But sometimes the silver lining is with COVID, I had nowhere to go and nothing to do. So
yeah. Well, what's the tibial plateau?
the tibial plateau is your biggest shin bone. It's the flat, like the top of your shin bone. So your thigh bone rests on it.
I see.
I'd probably take up rollerblading. I don't really recommend it.
No, really? Shit.
I didn't really learn how to brake before I went out in the neighborhood.
Uh-oh.
And I ran into a curb.
And then you did break.
I did. And I tore a ligament too, and some other things, and pulled a lot of muscles. It's been a rough 3 months.
Yeah. I broke my tibia as a young person. I had a cast from my toes to my groin, and I had a wheelchair at school. I got in trouble for going so fast, and there were 2 stairs in the hallway, and I could go fast enough that I would go off the top stair and land, and the principal wasn't impressed.
The other silver lining is my family members have all learned how to cook now.
Oh, was this intentional? Sort of.
No, but that was just another silver lining.
Had another silver
I'm
lining.
the only one who knows how to cook.
Well, wonderful. Well, I'm glad you're healing. I look out the window of my sweet little house here into sunshine and lots of leaves. The leaves are still on the trees. There's a lot of wind today. Nice place. I'm very grateful for it. So it's my plan today to speak about Vedana. And I think I have mastered how to use my iPad as part of this presentation. I had a bad discovery the other day. I have wonderful diagrams. You've seen a bunch of them, no doubt, that I used in a program called how funny, and Inspiration. And Inspiration no longer is supported by Mac OS Catalina. It just died. So all my I'm gonna find a way to save them. They're still usable on PCs, and so I will find a way. But it's a bummer when something you've been using for a long time just becomes unusable. Maybe it'll bring up more creativity. I can also recreate them on a different platform, and I will. But for now, I have my iPad, and I think it will be just fine. So, this practice that we do, people have been doing for 2,600 years. And we call it mindfulness. It would better be translated as heart mindfulness. When you ask an Asian, where do you think, they point at their heart. Now, we know that's wrong, of course. But There is an astounding capacity that we have of being aware. And we take it for granted, just like the fish in water. We take it for granted because it's all around. It is us. We exist as it. But I'd like to carry out a couple of little experiments. We do it all the time. Please become aware of the baby finger of your left hand. How did you do that? Please become aware of your right ear. How did you do that? To non-meditators, these suggestions sound really stupid. So what? Please become aware of the heel of your right foot. Please conjure up an image of your sink, your kitchen sink. How did you do that? Please remember someplace that you enjoyed when you were a small child. Please remember a vision, an image of the most wonderful vacation you ever went on. How did you do that? It doesn't exist except in mind, but somehow or another, what is it? What's the sentence? Let me think of a better example. Please conjure up or imagine Bob Dylan singing Tambourine Man. How did you do that? Interestingly, the more that I do this, I'm getting more and more teary. It's a miracle. How do we do that? The Buddha was really an extremist. He tried to find freedom from suffering through indulging the sense doors. And then he left and he practiced with the yogis in the woods and tried to find happiness through extreme concentration states. And that didn't do it. And then he tried fasting and never giving in to his senses. He became it's colorful, a 1 grain of rice a day man, which is low cal, low fiber, low everything, until he became beyond gaunt. There's images of him reaching in through his stomach and touching his spine. I'd like to do about 20 pounds worth of that. That would be very healthy for me. And then he discovered the middle path, the middle way, and he developed a way. He got free. He had some profound realization of such strength that we're still following it today, which is pretty amazing, right? 2,600 years. So, central to this path is this practice of mindfulness, heart mindfulness, of being awake, being aware. And then we could ask ourselves, well, aware of what? And there's any number of things we could cultivate in our meditation practice. We could try to have out-of-body experiences. We can do all kinds of things. But the Buddha suggested that we examine what it is to be a human being in a very systematic fashion. To develop a mind which is capable of the 7 enlightenment factors, really. Mindfulness, curiosity, persistence or energy, joy at the top here, tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. And with mindfulness, to study the human experience in oneself with a mind that is so clear that what is discovered becomes irrefutable. And then he broke human experience into 4 categories. 4 gocharas, they're called, 4 pastures. The 4 pastures of abiding, which we translate as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And the first one is mindfulness of the body, which is really where we begin because the body is the slowest changing aspect of a human being. So what do you do? What do we do when we want to observe the body carefully? We notice what it's doing. It's sitting here. It could be standing or walking or lying down. It breathes. That's why mindfulness of breathing becomes the quintessential foundational practice that we can do for the rest of our lives. It breathes. In my case, it rocks. I have a rocker here. It's nice. It dresses itself. It goes to the toilet. It eats. It drives. It works at the computer. It does all kinds of things. And those are all worth observing. It also ages. It sickens. It dies. And it goes to pieces. Mindfulness of the body. One of my notions today is to emphasize that one of the reasons we learn to practice with the 4 foundations of mindfulness is that then we can practice continuously. We can figure out, we can ferret out in any circumstance, to what might I be attending here? And then the second gochara, the second pasture of abiding, is feeling. And I want to come back to that in just a moment because that's really the focus of what I want to talk about. The third is mind states. And we can experience the mind when it's contracted, when it's spacious, when it's concentrated, when it's not. And we can also observe all the stories, the complexities of the personality, the emotions. And it behooves us to do that because in the process, everything that we become aware of, it becomes apparent and irrefutable that I'm not that. And what an incredible freeing thing it is and will be, the more that we can see that we're not the stories we tell ourselves. We're not the Sturm und Drang that comes out of our psychological and emotional process. It doesn't mean they're not important and not worth working with, but we set ourselves free. And then the 4th foundation of mindfulness is vast, which is all that they're called the Dhammas, the building blocks of our life experience, which are the 5 hindrances, the 7 enlightenment factors, the 4 noble truths, the senses themselves. But back to Vedana. And let me see if I can get my iPad to do its thing here. I go to this spot here, and I do this, and I say iPad via AirPlay, share, and then it says do the funny thing on the screen of the iPad, and do this, and then hold your breath, and there it is, the Buddha Broadcasting Network. It is from here that I'm speaking. Thank you, dear participants and friends. Now, well, there's lots of Vedana. All right. So, some people really connect with it when we have a diagram, And so I'm going to share this with you today. Vedana, often translated as feeling or sensation. And the eye, I'm going to... I was just making, can you visualize this? You open the eyes, and then there are objects out there, and there's light, and there's seeing consciousness. Now there's an hypothesis which I encourage you to check out. This is very interesting how slow this is to change. Earlier it was fast. So with each of these sense contacts, the notion is that they're pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral or undecided. And since that's so slow, I want to abandon it. There. I'll use my hands and gestures instead. Plus, I like seeing you. So, literally, E-Y-E, an image of you, pleasant. And I invite you to try this little experiment. If you're in gallery view, look around and notice that each picture may have a valence, pleasant, unpleasant, or indeterminate. Now, I'm not going to ask you to share any of this, but I find it very fascinating that there is a hierarchy that goes from liking to disliking, or vice versa. This is quite a potent practice to do. It's less functional now with all the masks on, but to walk through a busy place like the mall or a downtown street or somewhere and notice the liking and disliking that happens, the fear that might arise or the attraction that might arise. And to notice that it's conditioned. It arises spontaneously, the visual object, and liking and disliking. The same is true with sounds. I want to try a little experiment now. This works in person. We'll see if it works this way. So listening, unpleasant, right? And there's a movement away from it, disliking, or same sound, different attack. Eye, ear, nose. I live in a world that always smells of sort of like coffee and paint thinner since about 3 or 4 months ago. And they think it's a late onset, though not uncommon, result of my craniotomy. That they made this big hole in the front of my head, and then they dissected their way in halfway underneath my brain, which took them 3 hours, 2 people working through a microscope. And on the way, they exposed the olfactory nerve. And the surgeon, the neurosurgeon, Dr. Vivek Deshmukh, my hero, asked me in one of my follow-up meetings, how's your sense of smell? And they were concerned because it was exposed. That nerve was exposed for 3 hours, 4 hours. They kept it under wet gauze and all that. But anyway, so I have a strange, unpleasant, mildly unpleasant smell everywhere. I can eat a beautiful tasting strawberry and it tastes like strawberry and kind of like not so good coffee and paint thinner. And I've been having quite a lot of fun with it with Jen. That she'll make a really beautiful dinner and say, "Wow, this is really nice. It smells like tomatoes and this and that and coffee and paint thinner." It's very, and they say it's probably permanent. So smell, sense of smell, and there are some smells. For instance, think of, see if you can create this disliking. Think of the smell of rotting meat. It's a very distinct odor, and we are distinctly conditioned to get away from it. When I worked in Geneva in my early 20s, I was working in a lab trying to cultivate fetal lymphocytes from pregnant mother's blood. One of the poisons I used was putrescine, which is the essence of rotten meat. And it was not one drop of it filled the lab, just. Or think of your favorite perfume, or the smell of your favorite rose. Mine is the Double Delight. Think of that. And perhaps you can create an inner image, in a way, an olfactory image that's pleasant. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting. There's pleasant. There's a few pleasant, sweet, sour, umami, the taste of MSG, and so there's a few sensitivities here on the tongue. But we could also think of some things like maybe strong acid, strong citric acid or something. So there's pleasant, unpleasant. There are also, in all these sense door contexts, there are tons of things which are neutral, or they don't create a pushing or pulling. They're just there. And then there's the body. The body with bare attention. Notice what's happening right now. If you pay attention inwardly, when I do this, my toes are a little cold. My hands are warm, tingling, pleasant. The toes, very mildly unpleasant. The breathing is pretty neutral, pleasant, slightly pleasant. The itching on my face, on my right eye, is unpleasant. Try this. See if you can find this display of pleasant and unpleasant sensation in your body. When you're meditating, itches will come along, and they can be mildly unpleasant, and they can be mightily unpleasant. They can be agonizing. So in the body, we have a whole world of pleasant and unpleasant Vedana. And then, if this were not extraordinary enough, we have thoughts, memories, emotions, all kinds of reactivities that are constantly flashing into being, and they are of this valence, pleasant, unpleasant, or indeterminate. So why is this important? And why would it be worth really devoting a lot of time and energy to? And whenever I speak about Vedana, I remember a night I spent with Ruth Dennison in a little cabin, probably 30 years ago, maybe more. We spent a night in a little cabin with a tape recorder and a tape from Ajahn Buddha Dasa. So one of her students had brought it to her from Thailand. That was before the age of, Google, where you can go and look up Buddha Dasa talks about Vedana. But we had a deal that either of us could stop the tape at any point and comment or ask questions. And we spent the whole night. We were really up till dawn. She was a night owl. And it was him talking about how Vedana runs the world. that if we can't be observant of Vedana, we will be run ragged by our liking and disliking. Because it's fundamental to us. It's fundamental to, when there's discomfort, we move away from it. When there's pleasure, we move toward it. We are somewhat restrained by our sensitivity to other beings. We're somewhat restrained by the law. But we do really pretty remarkable things that, one, for instance, is I like driving my RV. I like having unlimited oil. Therefore, the feeling that I get when I'm warm and have choice means that it's okay for me to invade other countries and take the oil. We're driven by feeling. So, what if, think of a better example than that too. What if I like the taste of cookies, or I like the effect that alcohol has on consciousness? I think I'll just pursue it. And we can pursue and pursue, and it never really satisfies. It never really results in contentment, because it can't. But then we get caught in addictive and compulsive behaviors. Similarly, someone says something that I experience as mean and nasty and hurtful, and the Vedana of it is unpleasant. And what do? Well, I try to get away, or I attack. So there's another option, which is the option of the meditative. And so it goes like this. I'm sitting in practice. And there's an itch, or there's an ache, where my broken tibial plateau is healing, it's hurting. And it's mild. And so I notice it. I embrace it a little bit. I relinquish it. I come back to the breath. It's an itch. It's a mosquito that landed on my arm. I check out, well, I am not in an area where mosquitoes are carrying deadly disease right now. There's no Zika virus here. There's no malaria. So I could decide I'm going to let that mosquito do its biting thing. It's a mommy mosquito wanting to create babies. I'll participate in that undertaking. So I sit here and I come home to my breath. And then the itching gets stronger. And I come back to the breath. And then the itching gets really strong. And I watch how irritation comes up. I watch that the mind has an enemy image and an impulse to squash this little creature. But I stay still. I stay still, and I'm observing Vedana, this feeling, unpleasant feeling. It's not just the sensation, it's the affective tone of it. And then sometimes the miracle happens, which is that all the aversion goes away, and there's just feeling. The Four Noble Truths act out before our eyes. There's suffering, and the cause of suffering is the disliking it, the wanting it to go away, and then the release of that suffering, the nibbana of that suffering, is when the wanting it to be different goes away. So right there before our eyes, it's not really before our eyes, before our perceptual cognitive capacity, we discover the path to freedom. So all day long, from the moment we wake up till the moment we go to sleep, we are subject to sense door impressions. Some are pleasant, some are unpleasant, some are really pleasant, some are really unpleasant. Many, the vast majority, are neutral, or they don't require a response from us. It's like clothing right now. Unless you have some powerful aversion to clothing, it's just sensations. There is on a tree at Wat Pananachat in eastern Thailand, the monastery for Westerners, there's a green sign. There's a bunch of green signs, but one in the parking lot. They're about 3 feet by a foot, maybe. And they say in Thai, and then in English, the English I could understand, it said from Ajahn Chah, if you haven't learned to practice with feelings, with Vedana, you haven't yet begun. It's a pretty interesting statement. So, capitalist consumerist materialism is based on a belief that we can get enough goods and get rid of enough bads that we can then be happy. We can be content. And it doesn't work. We are destroying the planet on a false premise because of a false worldview. Satisfaction doesn't come through more consumption. Satisfaction comes from being able to experience what's really happening and not have to always be going for more pleasure or trying to get rid of any discomfort that arises. So there's another example, perhaps. Moods. Ever notice how prevalent moods are? They're there most of the time. In fact, it's a very strong sense of our identity, my mood. And there are pleasant moods and unpleasant moods. What if, in the midst of whatever mood you're experiencing right now, you were to pause and reflect, which of the 4 foundations of mindfulness might I attend to here? We could come to the body, but there's this mood. Well, we could turn to the mood, and mood's a little difficult to focus on, but we can know it. Is this mood pleasant or unpleasant? Well, mine, that which is here right now, is sort of unpleasant. There's a pressure in the head, sort of, and maybe it's fatigue. Hard to figure out exactly, but it's not. This is not an ebullient moment, a moment of yes. It's like this, and slightly unpleasant. Do I have to do anything about it? No. It's just what's here. Though I could have a cup of coffee. That's a mood enhancer. Why do we do that? We do that because of pleasant, unpleasant, and indeterminate. There is, in the Satipatthana Sutra on the 4 foundations of mindfulness, there's a refrain. After each of the teachings, each of the new parts of human experience we're encouraged to observe, there's these interesting lines which for decades I paid no attention to, though then I had it pointed out that this is what makes it insight meditation. It's what makes it really work, which is that, for instance, in pleasant and unpleasant Vedana, watch, they call it the origination factors and dissolution factors. Watch Vedana come into being and go out of being. Why? Well, it ever so subtly and then ultimately profoundly makes it obvious that mood is not personal. Mood is a phenomenon that happens, and it comes with pleasant and unpleasant. There's another Vedana practice which is very easy to do and very potent, which is when you have a meal on your plate, to look from one object to the next and see where the pleasure is. What are you going to eat first? Something's calling out and saying, I'm the best bite here. Something's over there saying, I'm not so, eat me because you need the whatever. But Vedana, in relationship, there's the constant movement of pleasant and unpleasant that's happening in relationship with a partner. So the idea is to become so attentive to it, so conversant with it, that we can allow mood to come and go. We can allow pleasant visual objects to come and go without grabbing onto them. We can allow all the various sense doors to be doing their symphony of liking and disliking without having to push things away or grab onto them. And one last thought just popped in. It's a William Blake poem. She who binds to herself a joy doth the winged life destroy. She who kisses the joy as it flies lives in eternity's sunrise. So this isn't a teaching that says don't experience pleasure. It's why not, thinking back to that poem at the beginning, why not experience that kiss? And then it ends. And do I cling on to that and I want it again now? Or do I recognize now that was pleasant? So I think I want to stop there. And I hope there's some question or response. What do you think? Is this practicable? Is this something you can make use of? And if it needs description in some other way, I'd be happy to try that.
Robert, it's Dave Mayer.
Dave, hello.
Hi. I have wrestled, well, I'm trying to find the right verb and I get in trouble no matter the verb I choose. So forgive me for the verbs, but I have wrestled with Vedana for as long as you've taught it to me. And I know you've had this question before, and each time you answer, something new pops up. But actually, I have two questions. One, the relationship between Vedana and the hindrances, because they both involve aversion, grasping, liking, disliking. Are they essentially two sides of the same coin? And the second one is because it's hard to detect ambivalence, as I sit. Do
you mean ambivalence or neutrality?
Well, neutrality. I don't know if that's the same thing. Maybe that's the problem. But is it in the Dharma wheel? Is Vedana where self attaches to experience? That somehow the judgment attaches, or we claim it as ours, and that's an intellectual question. And the other one is more experiential. Mm-hmm. How do I distinguish hindrance from Vedana, or is it just looking at the same thing differently?
I think it's just a different. It's putting it to different use in a way. To know the five hindrances, which are desire and aversion, restlessness, agitation and worry, sloth and torpor, and doubt. It's so helpful to know them because they they exist as sort of trance states. We become very identified with them and create a self which is full of them. They're full of themselves. And two of them are, of course, liking and disliking. And we bring in yet another piece of the Buddhist teaching. The roots of suffering are greed, hatred, and delusion. So, however we use them, whenever we observe them as what they are, rather than me, it's the same step into liberation, with different conceptual models layered on them. But to see unpleasant mood, like the other day when you were so caught up in that really deep anguish, one possible strategy would be to move to that place of realizing, whoa, this is really unpleasant. And in that move, one is relinquishing identifying in the middle of it and is somehow mysteriously capable of noticing unpleasant mood, which is a little attempt anyway at setting oneself free from it. I'm not sure that would be the most effective thing, but it's one thing one can do.
I had a hard time finding the right thing to do. What I ended up with was, wow, this is papancha. And it went on for, I'm still, settling out from it.
Uh-huh.
But I tried to just, the container for the experience wasn't big enough.
Yeah. You know what that reminds me of, David? You've been around long enough, you might have been here when when I ruptured my quadriceps in 2000, or no, it was earlier than, anyway, it doesn't matter when, the surgeon said, well, it's a little painful now. After the surgery, it's going to be really painful. Because they had to attach my quadriceps muscles to the kneecap, and in fact, it was awful. And the medication was inadequate, and I didn't read the bottles myself, and there was a misunderstanding, and I wasn't taking enough medication, and I was having an allergic reaction to one of them. So, at the time of the accident, I had a spacious, there was so much love around. People were taking care of me, and a helicopter came and got me in, and I was in shock. And it was a big love bath the whole day. And then it was post-surgery, third night or fourth night, and I woke up at 2:00. I'd taken all the medication I was supposed to take, and I was in just agony. And, I teach how to be mindful of the pain and become spacious around the pain, and the suffering goes away and all that stuff. And it just wasn't working. And what there was agony, just agony. And then I realized there's 5 hours till, I'd listened to the BBC News 10 times, and I couldn't distract myself. And the practice that finally emerged was, it's kind of like Tong Len, taking and sending. It was, this is a human being suffering in the middle of the night. This is the agony of being alone in pain. And how many other people are doing this right now? And a whole compassion practice opened up. And it was still awful. But there was some meaning to it, and it was more bearable because it was, and I could have framed it as a Vedana practice. This is unpleasant feelings and suffering, and no ability to go spacious with them. It's just, I'm in the middle of this agony, and this is the human condition.
My compassion practice needs work.
Well, of course, all of us. Thanks, David. Glad you're feeling better.
Thank you, and thanks, everyone.
I bet you are too, huh? Would you prefer the Vedana of that anguish, or what's happening now?
Well, there's still a lot that is happening, and I have plenty of opportunity to practice all sorts of things. So there's learning going on as well.
Yeah.
So.
I might just add one piece, which is for all of us, there come those times when the ego can no longer contain the uproar that's coming from inside. And that's when we really need each other, when we need friends, and we need a teacher. Sometimes we need medication. But it's normal for that to happen. And then the practice is all about how do I stabilize myself in the middle of that and not act in some way that hurts me or somebody else. But then also to observe the emergence of the ego again and the stability of that. And then we work with that capacity of stability in the ego to do the healing and the deconstruction work we need to do with those early traumas. So it's wonderful to see you back
Heartening
in.
from this, the support you gave me and the support everyone in the Sangha, the separate messages that well, anyway, thank you.
Isn't it astounding to discover that we're lovable even when we can't get a glimpse of that ourselves?
It helped. It definitely
What a
helped.
strange thing. It helped. Wonderful. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Hi, Robert. This is Michelina.
Oh, there you are. Hi.
Hello.
Michelina. Hi.
Hi. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about papancha that David just mentioned. I've never heard that term, and I just did a quick Google and found something. And like I didn't say anything at the time, but I very much related to what David was going through a few days ago, and I've had a lot of experiences like that as well. And I really appreciated the way you spoke of it as an emergence, which is I think a really gracious and reframing of being in what is often called like a crisis state in Western culture. And papancha like is very I'm my curiosity is piqued, and I wonder if you could just speak about it for a bit.
Let me share a little reading with you.
Cool.
I think it says it better than I can. It's called Papancha and Potatoes. Papancha. Here we are. You ready? Incidentally, you're dressed perfectly for your background.
I know I blend in.
It's really cool. All right.
Thanks.
A woman wants some potatoes for a meal she's cooking. So she sends her husband to the marketplace to buy potatoes. As he walks out the door, she calls after him, "Be sure and get a good price." So all the way to the marketplace, the man is thinking about potatoes and what he'll have to pay. If he buys the very best potatoes, he knows he'll have to pay more than if he buys lesser quality potatoes. On the other hand, the lesser quality potatoes are just that, not so good. In fact, he knows he'll have to be very careful in buying other than top-priced potatoes because the seller might try to stick him with a bad potato, even a rotten potato. When he thinks of someone cheating him by giving him a rotten potato, he gets really mad. Why do people have to be so greedy as to stick me with a rotten potato? Just at this point, he reaches the stall of the potato seller and screams at him, "You can keep your rotten potatoes." Right? One thought sets off another thought, sets off a memory, sets off a poor me, ain't it awful that this happened to me, and why did they do this? And then it picks up another issue, and then it watches the news, and then it's just, and the poor little ego is saying, "Wait, I can't hold this together." So that's, and it's so essential that at certain points in our life, that which we've been holding in check, we've built walls around it, and we've got great denial and suppression of it. It's so important that it gets to break through sometimes. And then we have a, quote, break open or a breakdown sometimes. And you don't want it to be so bad that you end up taking your life or something, or doing some really crazy things. But it's so important that if we're going to if we're going to wake up, we're going to go through some very regressed states. And that's one of the wonderful things about retreat and the container of a retreat, and also having a teacher who can handle that kind of stuff. Because many times on my retreats, some people will regress into all kinds of early places. In fact, I think of one. This is kind of a long story, but I can make it much shorter. I helped my teacher create a retreat in France. We rented a chateau, and we had 20. I set up a lecture tour for him in 10 cities, and we had 25 people come for a month. And one of the women, I believe she's now deceased. Her name was Inika, very fine artist, and her art was all black, dark pencil drawing, ink drawings, and she had some in the National Gallery in Amsterdam. And she came and she was doing a retreat, and one day her walking became very unstable. She couldn't do walking meditation very well, and I went and sat with her, and I encouraged her to just open further and further inside, and then where she went to was a little girl sobbing, "Die Glaze, die Glaze," and she remembered when she was very young, like 3 or something. She remembered a bomb hitting very close, and they had to run in bare feet through glass. And it opened up. She was like 2 or 3 days. She was just one without training might say she was a wreck, but she was getting born. She was grieving her way through this and other traumas that came along with it. And I went to see her a year later or something in Amsterdam, and all her art was bright colors and flowers, and she'd had a transformation in her life by allowing this, by being in a place safe enough that she could lose control. So that's why I'm as long as we can create and have a safe enough place around us. And don't have underlying schizophrenia or thing. We have to be conscious of those things. But it's so I almost always am cheering when people are breaking open and wishing for enough containment. Thanks for speaking. There we go. Anybody else? Boy, goodness, it's already after 12. How does time fly? Because it doesn't exist.
Hi, Robert. It's Kat.
Kat, hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for today's talk. And just a few people messaged me to see how the surgery was. So I just wanted to thank everyone so much for the amazing, joyful surgery stories before. I feel like it should be required before anyone goes into surgery that they have a sangha of people be like, I had this amazing experience with surgery. It's so much fun. I feel like that should just be part of the pre-op experience. And it really was a wonderful experience, and it was very, very special to have the insight and thought to thank the nurses and the doctors, not only for being there, but also for all the training that brought them there, which as a student myself was like, wow, this really is huge. It is a long time of thankless work. And now it's really interesting to be hearing this talk today, and having just a very different relationship with pain than I normally do. I've been sober about 2 months, and a lot of my experience up until that point was using alcohol or other things to try to mute pain of any form. And now it's currently for these past few days, trying to have a very different and much more compassionate and open-hearted relationship with pain, and taking pain medication with a great deal of compassion for my body, and not trying to get too much into my head of do I actually need this? What level of suffering is appropriate to avoid and that type of thing, and really being much more mindful of trying to actually just be in my body and hear
Great.
my body, what my body is asking for, without the judgment and criticism of the mind, which is a very frequent argument and battle right now. And so, yeah, it's really beautiful. When I first came out of surgery, I was in a lot of pain, which I actually don't really remember, but my partner told me, and she was there. And also she reminded me that I could always go back to my breath, like even when I was in a lot of pain. And it really helped. Like it really, really actually helped, even in pain that felt uncontrollable and scary. And that was really huge. Like I kind of always thought, like, had this sub thought of meditation's a really nice luxury practice when you have time. And that's really shifted over the past 2 months of being like, no, it's actually incredibly base level of life giving. So
Yay! Thanks. Glad you're looking so bright. Anybody else? Oh. I keep seeing people that I haven't noticed in the morning. It's like, oh, there you are. How nice. Pleasant. In fact, I could comment on the mood. The mood of this moment is much more pleasant than the mood when I began the broadcast. Nice to notice, right? What happens when we gather, when I get to play this role and gather? It's quite transformative.
Hey, Robert, this is Vic.
Hello, Vic.
Hey, I've got a question for you. So, when we were doing the mindful hiking program, one of the exercises we tried to do when we were hiking was the Vedana practice when we were hiking. Focus on old growth trees. That was the experience. Occasional hearing of the road noise, maybe unpleasant, and then after a while, just seeing rocks and stones became neutral. And one of the questions I was asked was whether there's really a neutral feeling, because this one person said neutral was boring and so unpleasant. And I responded saying, that feels like a secondary feeling, but there is a neutral or an undeterminate feeling. But I don't really feel very confident about that. I would love to hear your response on that.
Well, funny, where my mind goes to is right back to clothing. Most of the time we don't even notice our clothes. It's because they're neutral. Then I've got a couple of shirts that have a bad tag. You know, the tag that bites you, and that's unpleasant. And it's really obvious. It's like it's unpleasant. And one of the reasons, one of the strategies of meditation is to stop stimulating ourselves, to stop going for pleasure and avoiding pain or the unpleasant, in order to be bored, in order for boredom to arise. And every meditator reaches a point, sometimes many times, but where boredom is up and it gets very negative, very unpleasant. I've got to get rid of this. And then we get to work with that until the realization arises that the boredom is a reaction to there not being stimulation of the kind one wants. And then the boredom will simply just fall away. And once that begins to happen, you're never bored again, or rarely, because there's always something tiny, maybe, but there's always something to attend to. It's like Ruth's statement about once you have the Dharma, you never need to wait again, because there's always something to attend to. And neutral Vedana simply means there's no impulse to change it. It's just what it is. And I have dry eye syndrome. I have pain in my right eye pretty much constantly. And it used to really bother me. And unless it gets bad, it doesn't bother me much anymore. It's one more piece of this decaying body where there's unpleasant. And in fact, I've got teeth that are kind of, when I pay attention, there's a tooth that I think is going bad and it's unpleasant, but it doesn't create any Vedana because it's become pretty neutral. The response to it is neutral. Not making any sense? Any help?
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
And an old growth tree, visually, is sometimes just a tree. And we can add on to it, oh, it's an old growth tree and has all these meanings and I take great pleasure in it. But, you know, if you're hungry and you want to get to camp and geez, how many old growth, it's like the Ronald Reagan, you've seen one, you've seen them all. Because it's the valence that we put onto it that is what the Vedana is, or the valence that comes with it. I got a text here. Let me see if it. I wanted to read it. Oh. It's a little. I'm not sure if it's from Ajahn Chah, but it's do not try to be, good advice. Do not try to become anything. Do not make yourself into anything. Do not be a meditator. Do not become enlightened. When you sit, let it be. When you walk, let it be. Grasp at nothing, resist nothing. If you haven't wept deeply, you haven't begun to meditate. Well, there's all truths. So, thanks, Vic. Anybody else? And then I think we should make this the last person and then we'll end.
Robert.
I see you.
Jonas. Hi, Robert.
Hello, Mr. Jonas.
How are you?
I'm better than I was an hour or two ago. The mood is lighter. I'm glad.
Yay!
Yeah, it's even in the pleasant. The needle's slightly into pleasant.
Well, you guys were, you and Vic were talking about boredom. And it was interesting, years and years and years ago, it goes back literally 50 years. And I was sitting with someone once and we were talking about boredom. And he's kind of well-known fellow. And he looked at me, he says, boredom, anger without enthusiasm. So what I would do now, especially after that, is if I get bored, I look to see what truly is going on, because boredom is not a neutral state. It's a very aggravated state. So I don't look at boredom as neutral.
Thank you.
Welcome. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. You're big on my screen. It's cool.
I can't find what happened. I'm big on my screen.
I did it. I'm
like looking at myself.
Well, close your eyes.
I shall. Very good.
All right. Anybody sitting with something that has some Vedana, some wants to be said? Well, dear friends, thanks for coming this morning. My life is better because of our continued meeting. So let's go out on a song. Oh, I should do this. As soon as I hang up, or we close this, I'm going to go to my blog and put up a link to a really beautiful, uplifting song that I encourage you to have a listen to. It'll be 5 minutes probably before I get it up, maybe shorter. But I encourage you to do that, to give yourself a treat today. It's Keep Going On is the song. Oh, Jonas's spotlight is still on? I tried to turn it off. Are you on? Not for me. Oh, remove spotlight. There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Tempest. I really appreciate your little tech moments that are very helpful. So feel free. All right. So please unmute yourself if you wish. A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right. Don't forget. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Let me see if I can. Can I put it in the? I can't put it in the text here. I'll have to put it on my blog. Don't forget to go listen. It's worth it. Bye bye. Have a lovely day.
Bye.
The blog is at robertbeatty.com. All right. Here I go to do it. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Here we go. Goodbye, dear friends, on